The U.S. presidential election, an outcome predicted by Professor Quyen Quang Tran using Ngô Hùng Diễn physiognomy teachings, by Sơn Tung and Bich, narrated by Heather Lee. The United States presidential election campaign lasted for almost 2 years with much fanfare and excitement and finally ended on November 8, 2016. With most political observers, press and media, and even astrologer circles in the United States and abroad predicting that Hillary Clinton would become the 45th President of the United States. The final result came as a surprise to them. Meanwhile, Professor Quyen Quang Tran, a longtime researcher and practitioner of the physiognomy teachings of Ngô Hùng Diễn, foresaw that Donald Trump would win the election. Drawing on Ngô Hùng Diễn physiognomy teachings to evaluate the form, color, voice, and the countenance of the 2 leading presidential candidates, Professor Quyen Quang Tran not only foresaw the election result, but also predicted what would happen in the U.S. political arena and in the global context during the next 4 years under President Trump. Professor Quyen Quang Tran shared his predictions among his friends and recorded several of them in his book on physiognomy, published 2 months before Election Day. Professor Quyen Quang Tran's accurate prediction of the election result was confirmed by emails from Dr. Nguyen Quốc Quân and from Mr. Võ Thành Nhân, the director of the Saigon Broadcasting Television Network in the District of Columbia, USA, and from several other friends to congratulate him in the early hours of the morning of November 9, 2016. That he should have foreseen the outcome did not surprise many people who know Professor Quyen Quang Tran, because he has researched and practiced Ngô Hùng Diễn physiognomy teachings for over 50 years. He has published 2 books on physiognomy, namely Tướng Pháp Ngô Hùng Diễn, a 300-page hardcover book in Vietnamese, released in 2010 and republished in 2016, and the English version, entitled Physiognomy, The Art of Reading People, nearly 600 pages long, published by Amazon in 2016. In these 2 books, the author studied the fates of many people in political circles in the United States and the world, including President Obama, Princess Diana, Chairman Mao, President Clinton and Hillary Clinton, and the new U.S. President Donald Trump. In 2013, he predicted that President Obama's work and achievements during his 8 years in office were like the scenes of a play in which President Obama starred, but that when the curtain fell, everything would end, leaving no significant achievements or legacies. Earlier, when Princess Diana's wedding was taking place, Professor Quyen was the first one to predict that she would never become queen. He also predicted that the famous artist-singer couple from Vietnam, Le Uyên and Phuong, would divorce shortly after setting foot in the U.S. These studies of global figures led to his prediction that Donald Trump would win the election and not Hillary Clinton. We have read both of Professor Quyen's books, as well as followed and assessed his activities, and on this occasion, we met him again to obtain further explanations of the application of Ngô Hùng Diễn physiognomy teachings to the U.S. electoral contest. Professor Quyen shared the following insights with us. Ngô Hùng Diễn physiognomy teachings reflect the fact that the fate of people is determined by their actions, i.e. by their karma, and this fate can be seen in the shape and color of their facial and body features, in that of their colleagues, partners, and loved ones, or of their enemies, in the way they walk or they bear themselves, in their voices, even in the feng shui or energy flow of their homes or workplaces, but above all, in their personal countenance or energy. Through a detailed and accurate observation and a thorough understanding of these features, it is possible to predict success or failure in a person's business or career or relationships or in many other dimensions of the person's life, and even the timing of that success or failure, as well as the actions or circumstances that increase the likelihood of success or failure. The teachings for reading these features are described in detail in the 2 books that Professor Quyen has published on Ngo Hung Zien's physiognomy. In applying Ngo Hung Zien's physiognomy teachings to the presidential candidates, Professor Quyen observed that Mrs. Hillary Clinton appeared as follows. The most important factor was that her countenance was weak during the election campaign. In addition, she was not favored by her close supporters. If we look at her physiognomy in terms of sets and of a concept of host-guest, her presidential race was not favored by the fact that the host was weak and the guests were crowded and jumbled. Under Ngo Hung Zien's physiognomy, Mrs. Clinton is considered the host, while her aides, including President Clinton, are considered the guests. The closest aide to her was her husband, whose countenance was disordered and depressed, so he not only failed to help her, but in fact made it more difficult for her to win. Likewise, the countenance of her other close aides also caused her difficulties. In addition, because her physiognomy features have round shapes and a round countenance, when she encountered obstacles in her presidential race, Mrs. Clinton failed to address them thoroughly. Overall, her failure to win was 40% due to her and 60% due to her aides. Her depleted countenance was a key factor in relation to her ability to maintain a high level of alertness and perspicacity, as well as to maintain her stamina in campaigning and overcome the health challenges she faced in the later stages of the campaign. The race to the White House is like a horse race. Therefore, any small factors that slow you down can lead to failure. There was another critical factor that worked against Mrs. Clinton, based on Ngo Hung Zien's physiognomy, namely that she made a serious mistake, whether accidentally or not, when she ignored or failed to respond on time to more than 600 requests for help from the late Ambassador Christopher Stevens and 3 of his staff in Benghazi, Libya, in September 2012. This, together with her subsequent recount of the events, did not generate good karma for her campaign. As early as fall of 2009, when Mrs. Clinton held the position of Secretary of State for 9 months, Professor Quyen predicted that if she were to hold the position of Secretary of State for more than 2 years, her career would encounter significant difficulties, possibly to the extent of her being disgraced. Professor Quyen also said her husband would not be able to help her. As for billionaire Donald Trump, according to Ngo Hung Zien's physiognomy, he has a mix of features between those of a dragon, a lion, and a significant share of features of a wolf. If he had chosen to continue living in his jungle, he could easily have enjoyed a life of over 100 years, massive assets, successful children, and happiness until his death. When he decided to go out of his jungle to fight against men, he exposed himself to being hunted from all sides and to the risk of being killed. However, he has a square forehead, square face shape, square body shape, clear and tough skin, and small eyes set deep below a strong brow bone, and the power section of his face is square, plump, and firm. Such a person possesses a heroic personality. Born in a chaotic time, he cannot be indifferent and choose simply to enjoy his fortune on his own. Because of the square form and square countenance, when encountering attacks, such a person has to stand up and struggle hard and does not hide or run away. During his campaign, he always stood up and faced his opponents fiercely, face to face. If an opponent failed to defeat him clearly on an issue, Donald Trump would always carry the day. At the end of his ears, in his earlobes, there's a section that looks like a clear bag full of honey. According to Ngo Hongzian's Physiognomy, this means that in the final years of his life, he will achieve the greatest successes in his career. But below his prominent ear sections, the ears are scaled back, which indicates, according to Ngo Hongzian's Physiognomy, that calamities can follow his every success. In summary, if he is not harmed by his opponents or killed in an accident, he can become one of the most successful presidents since President George Washington. According to numerous political analysts and astrologers around the world, the election win by Donald Trump can lead to chaos for the U.S. and the world, and may result in the U.S. no longer being the most powerful nation in the world. Many people also believe that the issues that Donald Trump wants to solve within his first 100 days in office will not be solved. According to Professor Quyen, one should be careful in making assumptions on these matters, because to know the results of President Trump's work within the first 100 days of taking office requires a meticulous observation of the form, color, voice, and countenance not only of Donald Trump, but also of those who are directly responsible for solving those issues, as well as of those who are opposed to the resolution of those issues or to Mr. Trump's position on them. Based on Professor Quyen's studies to date, those difficulties or issues that are of a medium and long-term nature will certainly be resolved favorably, because Mr. Trump's countenance is very prolific. The fate of a country also depends on the feng shui of the country and on the physiognomy features of its future generations. The feng shui of the U.S. is very good, and the vitality of the White House is strong and prolific. In addition, the physiognomy features of American youth are increasingly well developed. Therefore, we can be certain that the United States will continue to prosper for centuries. As regards to other parts of the world, Professor Quyen predicts that ISIS will be eliminated, the world will be more peaceful, and there will be harmonious collaboration in the development process. He also predicts that China will face serious problems if their leaders, toughened by greed and cruelty, decide to take over neighboring small countries. America will not abandon the South China Sea, and Vietnam will have a chance to restore its military and its economy under a democratic and progressive regime. All of these predictions will progress smoothly, depending on the good heart or evil heart of the leaders in the world, but the result in the end will still be a progressive world. Moreover, President Donald Trump has the force and countenance to be a beacon for a new era for the world. Professor Quyen Quang Tran's predictions, based on Ngo Hongzian's physiognomy teachings, have revealed the secret door that allows us to foresee the fate of a person, a nation, and indeed of humanity. Such a fate may change when people realize that physiognomy is created by the heart and mind, thus it can also be annihilated by the heart and mind. Good deeds can, for example, mitigate or forestall an impending disaster. Indeed, as depicted in an immortal verse by Nguyen Du, a great Vietnamese poet of the 16th century, ever since the beginning of time, man's will has quite often triumphed over destiny. Thus a person's, or indeed a nation's, fate, and therefore also their physiognomy, can change over time. Love him or hate him, no one can deny that Donald Trump, with his victory, has marked a turning point in American history and that he will affect the world for years to come. Changes will happen, whether good or bad, and these changes can be foreseen through the form, color, voice, and countenance of Donald Trump and of other leaders in the world. Ngo Hongzian's physiognomy teachings, when applied carefully and with insight, shed a light on what we can expect in the future. Virginia, November 14, 2016.